Chapter 163. Outside the Imperial Garden. The Emperor of Tang waited anxiously. Su Yueyun purposely sent him away so that she could be alone with Su Qin. How could the Emperor of Tang not know what she meant? Silly girl, even at this time, you're still worried about whether I can accept it? The Emperor of Tang's eyes flashed with gentleness. He had been among the common people for nearly 30 years. Although Eunuch Lu was secretly protecting him under the orders of the Emperor of Tang, in reality, Eunuch Lu was just purely protecting him. As long as the Emperor of Tang's life was not threatened, Eunuch Lu would not appear. Under these circumstances, the Emperor of Tang had experienced the fickleness of human nature. It was not until he met Su Yueyun that the Emperor of Tang truly realized what warmth was. This was also why the Emperor of Tang had not taken in any concubines for more than 10 years after he ascended the throne. He insisted on his promise to only marry Su Yueyun. Your Majesty, Yun will be fine. Su Shimin beside him could not help but comfort him. With such a big thing happening, family Su naturally rushed to the palace early to see Su Yueyun. That's right, Your Majesty. Little Qin has been in the Shaolin Temple for so many years. He must have learned some real skills. Su Sungho also said carefully. I hope so. The Emperor of Tang heard this and sighed softly in his heart. How long has it been since Yun and third brother went in? The Emperor of Tang was silent for a while, then looked at the gardener in the Imperial Garden. The Imperial Garden collected all the precious flowers in the world. Naturally, it needed people to take care of it at all times. It should be known that some flowers were more delicate than people. Once the environment changed, they would wither and die. Your Majesty, it's been about an hour. Hearing this, the gardener immediately replied with trepidation. An hour? The Emperor of Tang frowned slightly. Are there many flowers in the Imperial Garden now? Do you need a long time to appreciate the flowers? From the Emperor of Tang's point of view, Su Yueyun and Su Qin went to the Imperial Garden to reminisce at most. It wouldn't take long at all. However, it was a little strange that they hadn't come out yet. Your Majesty, it's winter now, and most of the flowers have withered. There aren't many that are still blooming. The gardener thought for a while and said with certainty. He took care of the Imperial Garden every day, so he knew everything inside like the back of his hand. Suddenly, at this moment, Su Sungho, who was next to them, could not help but exclaim, Smell it, does it smell like flowers? After Su Sungho finished speaking, he sniffed hard and his face was full of disbelief. The fragrance of flowers? What fragrance can there be in the winter? Su Shimin rolled his eyes and was about to reprimand Su Qinghao, telling him not to make a fool of himself in front of His Majesty. But in the next moment, Su Shimin was stunned. It seems like there really is a floral fragrance? Su Shimin was stunned. He couldn't believe it. It's indeed a floral fragrance. It should be the fragrance of peach blossoms. I remember when I was young, I used to run to the back of the mountain. There were a lot of peach blossoms there. Su Qinyu swallowed his saliva, his face full of shock. If it wasn't for the fact that he really smelled the fragrance of flowers, he would definitely think that he was hallucinating. Peach blossoms were flowers that only bloomed in spring. It was winter now, so where could he find the fragrance of peach blossoms? Peach blossoms? The Emperor of Tang frowned, as if he couldn't understand why there was the fragrance of peach blossoms at this moment. Peach blossoms, this is indeed the fragrance of peach blossoms in full bloom. The gardeners in the Imperial Garden next to them were absent-minded as they muttered to themselves. If the fragrance of peach blossoms in winter was just a shock to others, then in the eyes of these gardeners who had been dealing with flowers for most of their lives, their worldview began to turn upside down. No matter what kind of flower, it would only bloom in a specific season. Since ancient times, it had never changed. But now, the gardeners looked at each other, unable to recover for a long time. The fragrance seems to be coming from the Imperial Garden. Su Sungho looked around and finally looked at the Imperial Garden. The Imperial Garden? The Emperor of Tang's expression changed slightly. Third brother and Yun are also inside. The Emperor of Tang thought of this, gritted his teeth, and immediately walked toward the Imperial Garden. Su Shimin, Su Sungho, and Su Qingyu looked at each other and finally followed in. Inside the Imperial Garden, Su Yueyun looked at the peach blossoms blooming in all directions with disbelief. The soaring fragrance filled the air, giving him the illusion that he had returned to the sea of flowers in May. Third brother, Su Yueyun stared blankly at Su Qin, his mind blank. At this moment, Su Yueyun had a lot of doubts, but in the end he didn't know where to start. Don't talk. I've shown you the flowers. Next, I'm going to heal you. Su Qin's eyes became slightly dignified. If it was just to save Su Yueyun, Su Qin certainly didn't need to think for so long. But Su Qin wasn't just satisfied with this. He wanted to use this opportunity to completely transform Su Yunyue's body from the inside out. Sleep first. When you wake up again, you will find that the world has changed. Su Qin looked at Su Yueyun, raised his right hand, and gently pressed on the other party's forehead. Suddenly, Su Yueyun only felt the world spinning, and his consciousness fell into darkness. Wood spirit liquid. Su Qin's thoughts moved, and a small white jade bottle suddenly appeared in front of him. Inside the jade bottle, a faint green liquid faintly flowed out, exuding an extremely rich aura of life. This bottle of wood spirit liquid was obtained by Su Qin some time ago. It can transform the body and heal any injuries. For Su Qin, the wood spirit liquid basically has no effect. Not to mention the 4 transformations of his body, the flesh rebirth alone is far from being comparable to the wood spirit liquid. Although the wood spirit liquid is gentle, it is powerful. Martial artists below grade 1 Great Grandmaster can't touch it at all. But since I stepped into the 6th heavenly layer Arhat realm, my grasp of the essence of power has become more subtle. I can completely let ordinary people absorb this wood spirit liquid, not to mention little sister is a martial artist. Su Qin looked at the jade bottle in front of him, his thoughts fluctuating. The next moment, the mouth of the jade bottle slowly opened, and a drop of light green liquid flew out. This drop of light green liquid rotated in the air, and a trace of life aura slowly spread out. Under Su Qin's control, the drop of wood spirit liquid suddenly exploded, turning into a misty green light, enveloping Su Yueyun. Phew! Inhale! As Su Yueyun breathed, the misty green light gradually poured into her body and completely immersed. Wood spirit liquid is a spirit liquid condensed from the vitality of heaven and earth. Only the body of a grade 1 Great Grandmaster can accommodate it. Although little sister absorbed it with my help, it was still a bit difficult. At least she needs to sleep for a while to completely transform the spirit liquid in her body into her own vitality. Su Qin thought silently. On the surface, it seems that Su Yueyun has completely absorbed the drop of wood spirit liquid, but in fact, most of the wood spirit liquid is accumulated in her body. At this moment, suddenly, there was a sound of footsteps outside the Imperial Garden. The Emperor of Tang, Su Shimin, and the other Su family members quickly walked in. Chapter 164. Third Brother. Third brother, are you all right? The Emperor of Tang strode in and said anxiously, "Why do I smell the fragrance of peach blossoms?" As soon as the Emperor of Tang finished speaking, he saw Su Yueyun lying on a boulder. Ignoring the fragrance of the flowers, he hurried forward and asked with concern, "Third brother, how is Yun?" "She's fine." Su Qin replied casually. At this time, Su Yueyun had completely recovered when the wood spirit liquid entered her body. After Su Yueyun completely absorbed the drop of wood spirit liquid, her body would be transformed by the wood spirit liquid and become a wood spirit body. The wood spirit body was a kind of martial Dao physique. It had strong vitality and was immune to all diseases. Even if it did not enter the martial Dao, it could still live for more than 100 years. And if it became a martial Dao practitioner, its talent in martial Dao cultivation, even if it was not as good as Li Wan's, was far better than ordinary people. In fact, ever since Su Qin entered the 6th heaven, he had been thinking about when to give everyone in the family Su a drop of wood spirit liquid. Not to mention that it could enhance one's talent in martial Dao cultivation, it could at least increase one's lifespan by a few decades. Yuner is fine? The Emperor of Tang's heart finally relaxed a little. If it was someone else who said this, the Emperor of Tang might be suspicious. But the Emperor of Tang was very clear about Su Qin's character. What he said was what it was. He would not exaggerate or understate. Since Su Qin said that Su Yueyun was fine, then Su Yueyun was really fine. Little sister feels a lot younger. Su Sungho opened her eyes wide in disbelief. As soon as she said this, the Emperor of Tang immediately noticed something different. If Su Yueyun's complexion was haggard and deathly pale before, then his current appearance had completely changed. Where did the floral fragrance come from? Su Qingyu blinked his eyes and looked around in confusion. At this moment, as Su Qin withdrew his power, the blooming peach blossoms quickly withered. Su Qingyu looked at them for a long time, but still couldn't see anything. Your Majesty, not only has Her Majesty's life force completely recovered, it's even far greater than before. It's truly unbelievable. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that the Imperial Uncle's medical skills are unprecedented. One of the Imperial physicians following the Emperor of Tang examined Su Yueyun carefully and exclaimed. He had long known that Su Qin's medical skills were godly, but he did not expect it to be so incredible. One had to know that these Imperial physicians had all seen the condition of Su Yueyun's body with their own eyes. They were very clear about the difficulties involved. If Su Qin had spent a few months using various ancient medicines to slowly pull Su Yueyun back, the Imperial physicians would have reluctantly accepted it. But now, Su Qin had only accompanied Su Yueyun to walk around the Imperial Garden, and in less than 2 hours, Su Yueyun had already recovered. Not only had she recovered, but Su Yueyun's current condition had never been better. This was simply unbelievable. Third brother. Why hasn't Yun woken up yet? The Emperor of Tang was happy for a while, but then he found that Su Yueyun had been in a deep sleep, so he asked worriedly. Although I saved her, she needs to sleep for about 2 years before waking up. Su Qin glanced at Su Yueyun and said. This was also the reason why Su Qin had been hesitating. After all, even with his help, Su Yueyun could smoothly absorb the Yi-Wood spirit liquid, but she still needed to sleep for 2 years. Of course, compared to the benefits that she would obtain later, the 2 years of sleep were not worth mentioning. 2 years? The Emperor of Tang breathed a sigh of relief. As long as Su Yueyun could wake up, not to mention 2 years, even if it was 20 or 30 years, the Emperor of Tang could afford to wait. This time, I'll have to trouble third brother again. The Emperor of Tang bowed slightly to Su Qin and said emotionally. Since he became the crown prince, Su Qin had helped him countless times. The Emperor of Tang could not even remember how many times. Okay. Since there's nothing else, I'll go back first. Su Qin and Su Shiming chatted with Su Sungho and Su Qingyu for a while, and then prepared to return to the majestic underground hall. Now that he had just entered the 6th heavenly layer, he needed to spend some time to stabilize his current realm, so that he could be more familiar with the power of the 6th heavenly layer. After Su Qin left, Su Sungho blinked and couldn't help but ask Su Shimin, Dad, you haven't asked little Qin the sudden appearance of the peach blossom fragrance just now. Although Su Sungho didn't know what the fragrance was, he was probably sure that it came from the Imperial Garden. At that time, only Su Qin and Su Yueyun were in the entire Imperial Garden. If anyone really knew, it could only be Su Qin. Fragrance of flowers? Su Shimin thought for a while and shook his head. Forget it now. Qin must be very tired after curing Yun. I'll ask Qin the next time I see him. Su Sungho nodded. At the same time, Su Qin had returned to the majestic underground hall. Sure enough, after reaching the 6th heavenly layer, I vaguely feel that it will take a long time to break through to the 7th heavenly layer. Su Qin sat cross-legged, carefully feeling the power of the circulation in his body, deep in thought. It was different from the cultivation of the 5th heavenly layer. If one wanted to break through from the 5th heavenly layer and step into the 6th heavenly layer, one only needed enough energy, enough accumulation, and enough comprehension. But from the 6th heavenly layer to the 7th heavenly layer, one had to face the bottleneck in the middle. Whether it was a legend or venerable arhat, Only by truly stepping into the 7th heavenly layer could one be called a true peak legend or peak arhat. In addition, only the 7th heavenly layer had the opportunity to condense the miniature domain. From this, it could be seen that for any venerable arhat or legend, the 7th heavenly layer was definitely a qualitative change. Cave world. The sky was dim. Su Qin slowly walked in front of a completely withered demonic tree with only the main trunk left. This demonic tree had an ancient aura. Although it had already withered at this moment, it had existed for at least 10,000 years, which met Su Qin's sign-in conditions. The sign-in system is bound to my true spirit. Even if I change my body, as long as my true spirit doesn't change, I can still sign in. This incarnation has half of my true spirit, so logically speaking, I should be able to sign in. Su Qin's thoughts fluctuated. What is a true spirit? A true spirit is the most essential thing of a living being. Every true spirit is unique and represents a certain living being. The physical body can be obliterated and the divine sense can dissipate, but the true spirit is unique. For example, for venerable arhat and legend, the death of the physical body is not a true death. Only when the divine sense collapses will it completely disappear. In fact, this sentence is not completely accurate, because after the divine sense, there is still the true spirit. Thinking of this, Su Qin looked at the demonic tree in front of him and said in his heart, "System, sign in." Congratulations to the host for signing in successfully. Obtained demonic origin fruit. Chapter 165. Congratulations to the host for signing in successfully. Obtained the demon origin fruit. A cold, mechanical voice sounded in Su Qin's ears. Demon origin fruit. A look of joy appeared on Su Qin's face. What he was happy about was not the demon origin fruit itself, but that his guess was confirmed. It's just that, although I can sign in the cave world, the number of times I can sign in per day has not changed. A slight look of regret appeared on Su Qin's face. To put it simply, Su Qin's true spirit is divided into two, and he can sign in with the Emperor of Tang's palace in the cave world. But the number of sign-in per day is still only one. For example, if he sign in the cave world today, if he wants to continue sign in the Emperor of Tang's palace, he can only wait until tomorrow. And if he sign in the Emperor of Tang's palace tomorrow, he will not be able to sign in the cave world on that day. Just as Su Qin was thinking, the sound of careful footsteps came, and a charming demon woman slowly walked over. "Master!" The demon woman bowed respectfully to Su Qin. This demon woman's name was Mohim. Not long ago, she was being hunted down, and Su Qin saved her after encountering her. Of course, the reason why Su Qin saved her was not because of sympathy, but because Mohim's temperament was extraordinary, and she obviously had other identities. Su Qin just entered the cave world, and he just happened to need a demon who knew more about the cave world. Now I ask you answer. Su Qin didn't raise his eyes, sitting cross-legged under the withered demon tree, and said lightly, "Master, please ask." Mohim said obediently. Mohim's appearance was not particularly outstanding, but she had a foxy face, and her figure was extremely hot, especially the faint fragrance emitted from her body, which was abnormally seductive. Any man who saw her would want to press her to the ground and ravage her. "Do you know about the human world?" Su Qin asked casually. "The human world?" Mohim was taken aback for a moment and immediately said, "Now that the vitality tide in the human world is at a low point, if Master wants to invade the human world, now is not the right time." Mohim paused for a while, as if thinking of something. However, several demon gods in the depths of the world predicted that the low point of the vitality tide in the human world is about to pass. Vitality tide? Su Qin looked at Mohim. Moji nodded and continued, "The human world is vast, and Yuan Qi rises and falls like a tide. However, most of the time, the Yuan Qi tide in the human world is at a low point. During this period, the human world has withered, and there are very few existences at the Demon King level. However, once the low point is over and vitality surges, the human world will usher in a brilliant era. At that time, Not to mention the existence of the demon king level, even the demon god or higher will be born one after another. And the demon gods in the depths of the world want to invade the human world and seize its origin before the real world comes. Mohim quickly said everything she knew. In fact, this information was a secret even in the cave world. Only demon kings had the opportunity to come into contact with it, but Mohim's identity was special, so she knew this in advance. Low point? Great world. Su Qin's expression remained unchanged, but his thoughts, which had always been calm like an ancient well, began to fluctuate. Even though Su Qin had some guesses in his heart, he didn't expect the truth to be like this. Mohim bowed slightly and stood in place, but she didn't think much about it. For Mohim, Su Qin was at least a high-level demon king. The information she said was a secret in front of ordinary demons, but in the eyes of a real demon king, it was just common knowledge. The reason why Su Qin asked her about this common knowledge should be to test her value. What else do you know? After a moment of silence, Su Qin asked unhurriedly. What else do I know? Mohim thought hard for a while and said, if the human world really comes to the great world, the original most barren continent may become the core of the great world. At that time, all the powerhouses in the human world will flock to that continent. I see. Su Qin's thoughts fluctuated, but his tone was flat. You can go. Yes. Mohim was slightly disappointed. Originally, she thought that Su Qin was going to keep her, but now it seemed that Su Qin had no interest in her at all. After talking so much, he didn't even look at her. Under Chang and City. In the majestic hall. Su Qin sat cross-legged. Demon origin fruit? Su Qin's mind moved, and a pitch-black fruit that looked like a heart appeared in his hand. The system space was unique. There won't be two just because Su Qin created one divine sense incarnation. Therefore, when Su Qin in the cave world put the demon origin fruit into the system space, Su Qin in the Emperor of Tang's palace could take it out from the system space. However, Su Qin's attention was not on the demon origin fruit at all. Vitality tide? Rising and falling? The great world coming? Su Qin's thoughts turned quickly. Thousands of years ago, the cave world invaded the human world, but it failed in the end. I'm afraid it was because they sensed that the world's vitality was at a low point, and it wasn't worth invading. Su Qin looked at the stone tablet not far away, and his mind moved. At this moment, all the doubts in Su Qin's mind were answered. For example, with the cave world's cultivation environment far better than the human world, why would they want to invade the human world? Now the reason was found. The human world that the cave world wanted to invade was not the human world at this moment, but the human world in the future. The next moment, Su Qin's figure disappeared and appeared thousands of feet high in the sky above Chang and City. Sure enough, Su Qin closed his eyes and felt carefully for a while. The heaven and earth's vitality is beginning to become richer. The amount of qi in the world has also increased. Su Qin opened his eyes and whispered to himself. Simply put, the current world was slowly becoming suitable for martial artists to cultivate. No wonder it was so easy to break through from the 5th heavenly layer to the 6th heavenly layer. At that time, I thought the vermilion fruit had made a great contribution. Su Qin shook his head slightly. The environment of heaven and earth had become suitable for cultivation, and the beneficiaries were all martial artists, and Su Qin was naturally among them. Even because Su Qin was the only venerable arhat at that time, the benefits he received far exceeded that of other martial artists. It's not just the vitality that has become abundant. Su Qin suddenly thought of something, and his figure rose again, almost reaching a height of 100,000 feet. If he went higher, the 9 heavens astral wind would shatter everything. But with Su Qin's current physical body, he could resist the scouring of the 9 heavens astral wind, but there was no need. A height of 100,000 feet was enough for Su Qin to verify some of the things in his heart. At this point, Su Qin raised his head slightly, looked at the vast sky, and then lowered his head, looking down at the continent under his feet. The sky is getting higher, and the earth is getting wider. Chapter 166. The sky is getting higher and the earth is getting wider. Su Qin's face was solemn as he said word by word. If he was on the ground, even Su Qin would find it difficult to find anything, because compared to this world, a person is too small. But now that Su Qin is high in the sky, he found that the whole world is slowly changing. This is the essence Qi tide? Su Qin already believed most of Mohim's words at this moment. If it was just the essence Qi becoming abundant, it might be a coincidence, but now the whole world is changing. It can only be the essence Qi tide that Mohim mentioned. The world is about to change. Su Qin returned to the Emperor of Tang's palace. This time, he did not return to the underground palace, but stood in front of the right spring square. There is one more peak grade 1 great grandmaster in the imperial palace. Su Qin's divine sense shrouded the commander of the Forbidden Army and instantly found that his internal strength had transformed and stepped into peak grade 1. If it was before, Su Qin would not have found it strange. The commander of the Forbidden Army was originally peak grade 1 and was only one step away from his own transformation. Now that he has a breakthrough, it is only natural. But after experiencing the existence of the essence Qi tide, Su Qin did not think so. There are more martial artists in Chang'an City. Su Qin's divine sense continued to expand and gradually covered the entire Chang'an City. If this trend continues, the first legend may be born in a few years at most, Su Qin guessed. The world's Qi is changing, and it is much easier for a peak grade 1 great grandmaster to grasp the world's Qi. In this case, someone may really be able to step into the legend realm. However, it is a good thing for other martial artists, but is it not the same for me? A smile appeared on Su Qin's face. If the essence Qi tide has not recovered, even if Su Qin has a lot of spirit medicines and spirit fruits, it will take at least 20 years to reach peak 6th heavenly layer. As for breaking through from peak 6th heavenly layer to the 7th heavenly layer, it will probably take another 10 or 20 years. But now, 2 years? At most 2 years, I can enter the 7th heavenly layer. Su Qin judged in his heart. At his level, his grasp of his own body was extremely precise. He could even sense his lifespan, let alone the progress of his cultivation. 2 years in the 7th heaven, 10 years in the 8th heaven, and 30 years in the 9th heaven. So, in 50 years at the latest, I can reach the peak of the 9th heavenly layer and reach the great Arhat realm? Su Qin's expression was filled with joy. Perhaps for ordinary people, 50 years was equivalent to more than half a lifetime. But in the eyes of an Arhat like Su Qin, who has lived for more than 1,000 years, 50 years is only 1/20th of his lifespan. Let's see what effect the demon origin fruit has. Su Qin was in a good mood. He integrated his divine sense into the system space and looked at the demon origin fruit that was beating like a black heart. Just now, his attention had been focused on the vitality tide, and he had neglected this spirit fruit from the cave world. Just from the energy fluctuations, it is equivalent to 100 cinnabar fruits. Su Qin nodded slightly. If he wanted to sign in 100 cinnabar fruits, he would need at least a month to sign in continuously at the crop altar. But now, one demon origin fruit solved the problem. If there are a few thousand more of these spirit fruits, it will be enough for me to cultivate in the 7th heavenly layer. Su Qin was quite satisfied. This demon origin fruit didn't contain essence Qi of heaven and earth, but the monstrous demonic Qi of the cave world. In front of other martial arts legends, the demon origin fruit was no different from poison and couldn't be absorbed at all. But for Su Qin, it was just using the Devil Buddha golden body to convert the demonic Qi in the demon origin fruit into true essence. At most, it was a little troublesome. Keep it first. I'm only at the 6th heavenly layer now. It's too extravagant to consume the demon origin fruit. I'll wait until I reach the 7th heavenly layer. Su Qin slowly retracted his divine sense. Just as Su Qin was about to enter the right spring square. Third uncle. Li Wan was trotting towards him. Third uncle. Third uncle. Li Wan ran to Su Qin, so excited that he was incoherent. Speak slowly. Su Qin glanced at Li Wan and said casually, Okay. Li Wan calmed down and after a while he said, Third uncle, I broke through again. I'm now a 7th grade martial artist. Li Wan's pretty face was full of disbelief. He had just entered the 8th grade some time ago, but it didn't take long for him to reach the 7th grade. If Li Wan hadn't confirmed that his body was normal and his inner strength was vigorous, he would have thought that he had gone mad. Not bad. Su Qin nodded slightly and praised Li Wan, which was rare. Although it was due to the vitality tide, Li Wan was able to cross a major realm out of thin air. Obviously, he had his own efforts. Third uncle, why? Li Wan's heart was full of doubts, and he couldn't help but ask, why do I feel that martial arts cultivation has become easier? Su Qin smiled and said meaningfully, it's not that you feel it's easier, but that this world has become easier. Is that so? Li Wan nodded as if he understood. Although he didn't know what Su Qin was talking about, and how cultivation had something to do with the world, since Su Qin said it, it was right. Now that you're a 7th grade martial artist, I'll teach you something. Su Qin looked at Li Wan and said, now that the world has changed and the vitality tide has recovered, it is conceivable that in the near future there will be many more powerhouses in the world. Therefore, Su Qin has to consider cultivating some real powerhouses for the Empire of Tang. Really? Li Wan's eyes lit up when he heard this. Of course it's true. Su Qin's eyes were calm. Fists, palms, legs, fingers, swords, spears, and bows. Choose one, and I'll teach you. Su Qin said slowly. It sounds complicated. Li Wan blinked and looked at Su Qin expectantly. Third uncle, can't I learn all of them? Learn all of them? Hearing this, Su Qin smiled and shook his head. Everyone's energy is limited, and it is the same for cultivators. Even grade 1 great grandmasters, legends, and even earth immortals are only good at one aspect. If you learn all of them, your future achievements will be limited, and the gains will not make up for the losses. Su Qin said gently. In fact, this is indeed the case. Throughout the ages, even Patriarch Bodhidharma of the Shaolin Temple, who is known to have learned many divine arts, only knows the divine arts of the Shaolin Temple. As for the other divine arts in the world, they are limited. When Li Wan heard this, a thoughtful look appeared on his face. Third uncle. Li Wan suddenly realized something, looked at Su Qin, and asked cautiously, what are you good at, third uncle? Su Qin laughed involuntarily. He looked up at the sky and said calmly, I am invincible. Chapter 167. Invincible? Li Wan looked up at Su Qin. She was only about 10 years old and had never been out of the palace. Of course, she didn't know what the word invincible meant. At this moment, Li Wan only felt that her third uncle was very powerful, at least much more powerful than those annoying eunuchs in the palace. Okay. Let's not talk about this. What do you want to learn? Su Qin shook his head and looked down at Li Wan. What do you want to learn? Li Wan thought seriously for a while and finally said, Third uncle, I want to learn swordsmanship. I want to be the best swordsman in the world. Li Wan's little face was full of yearning. Since ancient times, swordsmen had killed one person in 10 steps and were unstoppable. This had long been ingrained in people's hearts. When Li Wan thought about what she wanted to learn, the first thing that came to mind was swordsmanship. Swordsmanship? Su Qin smiled and said casually, wait here for a while. After that, Su Qin turned and walked into the right spring square. After a while, Su Qin came out again, holding a palm-sized piece of wood in his hand. Third uncle, what is this? Li Wan's eyes were sharp, looking at the wood in Su Qin's hand curiously. The way of the sword you want to learn. Su Qin looked at the wood in his hand, raised his right hand and gently scratched it. Suddenly, a shallow sword mark appeared on the wood. Look at this sword mark often, it will teach you what the way of the sword is. Su Qin handed the wood to Li Wan. How can this wood teach me swordsmanship? Li Wan opened her eyes wide and was about to ask this question, but the next moment, Li Wan's eyes fell on the sword mark on the wood. In an instant, Li Wan only felt that the world became illusory, and in her eyes, there was only the shallow sword mark left. The sword mark gradually became bright, detached from the wood, and stood between heaven and earth like a peerless sword light. It became bigger and sharper, and time seemed to slow down. After a long time, Li Wan blinked his eyes again, his small face full of confusion. "Third uncle, why do I feel like this piece of wood is alive? Let's go back." Su Qin smiled and waved his hand. "Remember what I said. Look at the sword marks on the wood often." "Yes." Even though Li Wan still had doubts in his heart, he could only bow and turn to leave. Su Qin was still standing in the same place. His eyes were deep, and no one knew what he was thinking. The sword mark on the wood was casually left behind by Su Qin. It contained a trace of his understanding of the sword Dao. If Li Wan can comprehend that shallow sword mark, then even if he doesn't become a legend, he would at least become a peak grade 1 great grandmaster. Most importantly, that sword mark had pointed out the path for Li Wan in the future, allowing her to no longer be confused or doubtful about cultivation. She only needed to focus on moving forward. This is the most terrifying effect of the sword mark. Of course, when Su Qin handed the wood engraved with the sword mark to Li Wan, he connected it with Li Wan's divinity. Except for Li Wan, no one else would have any reaction when seeing this sword mark. Next, in addition to signing in Cultivation and occasionally giving pointers to Li Wan, Su Qin felt the changes in heaven and earth. According to Mohim, heaven and earth's essence qi is like a tide, rising and falling. When it falls, all methods wither, and martial arts cultivation is extremely difficult, but when it rises, the laws of heaven and earth appear, and the essence qi is abundant, making cultivation easy. The essence qi tide is the general trend of heaven and earth. It cannot be changed or disobeyed. Su Qin sat cross-legged, carefully feeling his cultivation increasing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Thoughts constantly flashed through his mind. Perhaps the legendary Buddha has the strength to affect or even reverse the essence qi tide, but obviously, the current Su Qin does not have this ability. Time passed slowly. A year passed in a blink of an eye. In this year, the recovery of essence qi became more and more obvious. In the Emperor of Tang Palace, in addition to the commander of the Forbidden Army breaking through to peak grade 1, there were 2 more peak grade 1 great grandmasters. For a time, the foundation of the Empire of Tang soared, surpassing the most prosperous period in history in one fell swoop. It only took a year for me to reach peak 6th heavenly layer? Su Qin walked out of the right spring square and felt the changes in his qi. He was overjoyed. There's no need to rush now. I'll wait for a few months before breaking through. Su Qin's mind quickly calmed down, and his thoughts fluctuated. Even if the environment of heaven and earth has become more abundant and martial arts cultivation has gradually become easier, but it doesn't mean that one can really break through at will. Not to mention, breaking through the most important bottleneck of the Arhat realm from the 6th heavenly layer to the 7th heavenly layer? It's been a long time since I signed in at the Imperial Palace. Su Qin glanced around and thought. Since his incarnation entered the cave world, most of the times he signed in were spent in the cave world. The reason for this is that after more than 10 or 20 years of repeated signing in, most of the treasures in the Imperial Palace have begun to be repeated. Su Qin has accumulated more than 10,000 drops of innate spirit liquid, and as for other treasures, it's about the same. The cave world really has a lot of Dao accumulation. Su Qin's thoughts fluctuated, and his expression was filled with emotion. He felt that his act of splitting out an incarnation to go to the cave world was becoming more and more correct. He didn't have to bear any risks, and the benefits he obtained were far better than staying in the Imperial Palace all the time. In a year, I probably know some things about the cave world. The demon well under Chang and City is connected to the area ruled by the Demon Cloud City in the cave world. And the Demon Cloud City Lord is a demon king-level existence, almost corresponding to the legend Arhat. This Demon Cloud City Lord has been a demon king for hundreds of years, and his strength is probably between the 3rd and 4th heavenly layer? Su Qin touched his chin. In addition, in the depths of the cave world, it is said that there is a demon god overseeing the entire cave world. I wonder what level of powerhouse this demon god is? An earth immortal? Or stronger? Su Qin had a thoughtful look on his face. Su Qin only thought for a moment and then stopped thinking about it. Although the cave world wants to invade the human world, it will be hundreds or thousands of years later. Only when the world's vitality tide completely recovers will the cave world make a move. Before that, the cave world actually looked down on the human world. The rise and fall of the world's vitality tide involves the height of the entire world, and it's not something that can be completed in a few years or decades. Therefore, Su Qin wasn't in a hurry at all. Just as Su Qin slowly adjusted his state, another 6 months passed. On this day, in a majestic underground hall, Su Qin sat cross-legged. The next moment, Su Qin opened his eyes leisurely. It's almost time to break through. Su Qin's eyes were bright, and he made a decision in his heart. Since stepping into the peak 6th heavenly layer 6 months ago, Su Qin spent a full 6 months adjusting himself, wanting to improve himself to the most perfect state. Now, he finally reached it. Chapter 168. Everything's ready. Next, I will enter seclusion and enter the 7th heavenly layer. Su Qin sat cross-legged in the majestic hall with a dignified expression. Whether it's Venerable Arhat, a legend, or the demon king of the cave world, the 7th heavenly layer is a qualitative change. Stepping into the 7th heavenly layer is equivalent to stepping on the peak of this realm. There is a chance to condense a miniature domain completely above the power of heaven and earth. Although there is a chance to condense a miniature domain, condensing a miniature domain is two different concepts. Most 7th heavenly layer and even 8th heavenly layer martial artists can't condense a miniature domain. But there is a chance, at least there is hope. Su Qin thought for a while and slowly closed his eyes. The true essence in his body continued to revolve and rise, and an inexplicable aura enveloped the entire majestic hall. Meng Yuan Empire. Endless grassland. The Meng Yuan Empire's imperial teacher was sitting cross-legged on the top of the holy mountain. Whoosh, endless world's essence qi continued to gather and shrink, rushing towards the imperial teacher. At the foot of the holy mountain, the monarch of the Meng Yuan dynasty and several ministers were waiting patiently. It's been more than a year. The imperial teacher hasn't taken that step yet? The Meng Yuan emperor looked worried as he muttered to himself. Although the emperor of the Meng Yuan Empire was not good at martial Dao, he knew that a martial Dao breakthrough was not necessarily successful. Many martial artists died during a breakthrough, let alone the imperial teacher, who was trying to break through to a higher level from the 9th grade martial Dao. Even if the emperor is confident, he can't help but worry at this moment. Don't worry, Emperor. The imperial teacher is invincible in the world. He will definitely be able to break through smoothly. A rough man next to him whispered. I hope so. The Meng Yuan emperor sighed softly. Although the imperial teacher's status in the Meng Yuan Empire is higher than the emperor didn't have any thoughts about it. Without the suppression of the imperial teacher, the entire Meng Yuan Empire would have collapsed long ago. How could it be like now, eyeing the other countries covetously with the power of a single country? Moreover, the reason why the emperor can sit in this position is because of the imperial teacher's support. In this case, the emperor can't wait for the imperial teacher to live as long as possible. How could he have other thoughts? Just as the two of them were talking, the qi of heaven and earth suddenly stopped and then gradually calmed down, no longer converging towards the peak of the sacred mountain. This is? The burly man's pupils shrank as he subconsciously looked towards the mountain peak. The emperor of the Meng Yuan Empire may not be able to detect the changes in the world's essence qi, but as a martial artist in the upper realm, he can already feel the fluctuations of the world's essence qi. When the Meng Yuan emperor saw the rough man's performance, he also followed his gaze and looked at the top of the holy mountain. That is, the coarse man's expression changed. At the top of the mountain, a tall figure had appeared out of nowhere. This tall figure slowly walked down the mountain. However, what made the rough man feel incredulous was that with every step the tall figure took, he would cross hundreds of meters. In just a short moment, he had already arrived at the foot of the mountain. Imperial Tutor. Imperial Tutor, you finally come out. The Meng Yuan emperor was overjoyed. He quickly ran to the tall figure and said respectfully, This tall figure is Meng Yuan's imperial teacher, who has been in seclusion for a year and a half. Greetings, imperial advisor. The coarse man swallowed his saliva, walked forward and bowed. Imperial tutor, have you taken that step? The coarse man mustered up his courage and asked. If it was before, when the coarse man saw the imperial tutor, he would only feel that the other party was the embodiment of heaven and earth. But now, the coarse man felt like he was facing an ordinary person. Although the imperial tutor was standing in front of him, the coarse man couldn't detect any aura from the other party. Of course, the coarse man didn't think that the imperial tutor was really an ordinary person. Returning to the origin. This is returning to the origin. The coarse man roared in his heart, but his expression became more and more respectful. He almost lowered his head to the ground. I barely made it out. The imperial tutor looked at the coarse man with a smile on his face. It wasn't until now that I know why a legend is invincible in this world. As soon as you enter this realm, your divine sense will transform, and you will be able to completely control the power of heaven and earth. With just a thought, you can collapse mountains and crack the earth. It's a legend, the imperial tutor said slowly with a sigh. Since he entered the legend realm, he felt that heaven and earth had changed. It was as if a fish that had been living in the water suddenly jumped and saw the world above the water. When the coarse man heard the imperial tutor's words, he immediately memorized them in his heart without missing a word. Because the coarse man knew that this was the insights of a legend. In any era, it was a top secret. It was something that countless grade 1 great-grandmasters could only dream of. Okay. How is the preparation of the army? The imperial tutor said slowly, then turned to look at the emperor, who was also standing next to him. As early as the imperial tutor was preparing to break through, he asked the emperor to prepare the army. As soon as he enters the legend realm, he will lead the army south and unify the world, achieving the great feat that the Meng Yuan Empire has not been able to accomplish for countless years. Imperial tutor. The army has been mobilized. At present, the Meng Yuan Empire has gathered 1 million iron cavalry. The other 4 million troops are waiting for the imperial tutor's order to go south. The emperor bowed and said, 1 million iron cavalry and 4 million troops can be said to be the entire heritage of the Meng Yuan Empire. Among them, 1 million iron cavalry was accumulated by the Meng Yuan Empire for hundreds of years. As for the 4 million troops, they were forcibly recruited by the Meng Yuan Empire over the past few decades after destroying more than a dozen small countries in the surrounding area. Compared with 1 million iron cavalry, the 4 million troops are not worth mentioning at all. But no matter how weak they are, once the number reaches 4 million, it is still daunting. In that case, let's go south. In the shortest time, we will reach Xianxia city. The imperial tutor said faintly with his hands behind his back. Xianxia city? The Meng Yuan emperor was shocked. Imperial tutor, the legend in Xianxia city. The emperor asked cautiously. Don't worry. The imperial tutor glanced at the emperor and said without changing his expression, although I have just entered the legend realm, my cultivation technique is good at attacking. Coupled with the blessing of the Meng Yuan Empire's national fate, my fighting methods are close to that of a second heavenly layer legend. Even if it's not as good as the legend in Xianxia city, it's easy to delay the other party. At that time, you can take advantage of the situation and trample on Xianxia city. Although the imperial tutor's tone was light, it was full of confidence. The emperor immediately bowed when he heard this. Soon after, a piece of news quickly spread from the Meng Yuan Empire and instantly swept the world. The imperial tutor has become a legend in a single leap. The Meng Yuan Empire has mobilized an army of 5 million to go south. The world was shocked, and all countries were terrified. Welcome to Legends of Cultivation, audiobooks, where we bring ancient fantasy to life through storytelling. Follow the rise of heroes who defy fate, unlock mystical powers, and battle across celestial realms. Our audiobooks are crafted for fans of Chinese cultivation novels, filled with battles, breakthroughs, and legendary artifacts. Subscribe and be part of an unforgettable journey into the realm of immortality.